When you've been in VR as long as I have, you get to play a fair amount of VR shovelware, and after a while, the hopes of finding some VR indie gold does slowly diminish. But last week, we had Exoshock, which was an absolute gem, and this week, I played and completed an absolute banger called Titan Isles from Pystec Games. These guys are well known for the Windlands series, because no other VR games captured that VR Spider-Man movement quite like these games did, especially the sequel, which added weapons, better graphics, boss fights, and 4-player online co-op. Titan Isles then feels like the ultimate recipe of everything these guys have learned so far making VR games, with the inclusion of 4 exosuits that are completely different to use and upgrade, and from a single player perspective, this is basically 4 VR games in one. It's got massive bosses and a gorgeous soundtrack, and I found myself compelled to play this right through until the end. But unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but still, this is easily one of my favourite VR games to play right now, especially with friends. When I first fired up the game, I used the suit called Storm. It's an ideal starting loadout, especially if you haven't played Windlands before. It's basically like Iron Man. You get a jetpack, arm jets to maneuver in any direction, and hand cannons. If you bring your arms together, your hand cannons turn into a rifle, and I personally love it when a game really leans into mechanics that only VR can do. Once the credits rolled, which took me around 5 hours on normal difficulty, the upgrades had made such an impact on my gameplay that I wanted to start the game all over again and use a different suit. Not just to see what the upgrades do, but to see how the gameplay, or at least the way I play the game, changes with the upgrades. And if I was to pigeonhole this game into a genre, it would be a bullet hell style shoot 'em up, and it definitely has a challenge when you start up in the difficulty for the higher rewards. All the biomes have different routes, and since I smashed the first level pretty easily with no upgrades, I felt pretty confident trying the higher difficulty to speed up my progression. But I actually got my ass handed to me pretty quickly, and I respect the game for it. It was clear I was trying to peak too early, and I hadn't earned enough exosuit upgrades to take on that difficulty yet. But as I progressed and got used to the movement and the enemy types, I found this game become a bit of a symphony to play. The levels feature some serious platforming and some very cool zip lines that keep everything fast paced. And before I forget, I think the soundtrack in this game is absolutely beautiful and is definitely one of the main highlights. Graphically, it is a good looking game, but I don't think it's going to shock anyone. But what will shock you though, especially in multiplayer, is the scale of the Titans next to your fellow players.
He's got to be dead soon, right? Come on now.
Spider-Man,
So
go!
big.
Yes!
Chopped it off.
Woo! I was taking him out from the inside.
That's cool. I love the scale of the boss fights. They're amazing. This arena's
This is the crazy bit. This is when you see how small we are suddenly when you get together.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but then
We're like ants.
Yeah, it's
standing
so cool.
underneath him like this is kind of ridiculous.
In fact, I think this game has the largest bosses of any VR game I've ever played, including Behemoth, and it gave me some Shadow of the Colossus vibes at times. What we have here is a VR-only bullet hell shooter with good graphics, addictive gameplay, and a compelling gameplay loop. And before I get into the negatives, I need to explain the 3 other exosuits. If you're a fan of Windlands 2, you'll immediately feel at home with the Hunter suit, which features Doc Ock style grappling hooks and a bow. And we all know bows in VR are awesome, and this one is no exception. Then there's a suit called Blink, which has the most sensitive and accurate mid-air movement. It gives you triple jump ability, and you can fire rocket discs pulled from your chest. And finally there's Goliath, which fires explosive goo from a scorpion style tail cannon and has a massive shield. And each of these in their own right takes time to master, and as you slowly unlock the upgrades, become even more powerful. But now it's on to the negatives, and I'm going to start with the small stuff first. During the story you meet a character which is pretty integral to the story, and unfortunately he stopped interacting with me pretty much after the second level. Even though I was regularly told to speak to him, it's minor but worth noting for the developers. There are lots of collectibles and targets to shoot around each biome, but they actually don't do anything apart from increasing the total amount of them you've shot or collected. So these items are pretty much pointless overall, and only something hardcore players will probably care about. Now onto my medium concerns. This game is definitely built around multiplayer, and Titan Isles really does shine online, and you can kind of tell this is how the game is meant to be played. But personally I really enjoy going through the story alone. But some of these Titans that you come across are armed to the teeth with multiple weapons, and it can feel close to impossible to get close or do some damage because these guys are designed to kill multiple players at once. And I say it's almost impossible because I did beat the game, but a tiny bit of rebalancing would be welcome. But please keep in mind this feedback is only for single player, because in multiplayer this game does a fantastic job of scaling enemies and difficulty and personally I think that's quite commendable. Now onto the big concern, and this one is tied to replayability, which I've actually been praising up till now. So here's a spoiler warning if you don't know much about the end of the game. After the end credits roll, which are fantastic by the way, showing some extra cool artwork and music, there's currently no way to restart the story, say in the style of a New Game Plus. Instead you get something called Endgame, and this lets you play the game roulette style, so you can keep upgrading all the suits. But what I really wanted was to keep my unlocks and upgrades and re-experience the story all over again, perhaps in a different suit. As I said earlier, this really does feel like 4 games in one, and a proper New Game Plus would have incentivized me jumping straight back into the story again, to go maybe exploring for more of the lore that I missed the first time round, and get to experience different difficulty due to having a lot of upgrades. And as it stands, due to not being able to re-experience the story, I'm now only playing multiplayer, just so I can keep getting the upgrades. Maybe this was the intention all along, but I wanted the chance to replay the story fully powered up. Overall, Titan Isles is a fantastic VR game. It really pulled me in and it didn't let go the entire time. And multiplayer is definitely the icing on the cake. It's challenging, addictive, and most of all it's fun to play with other players. And with that all in mind, it definitely gets a solid buy recommendation from me. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and I'll see you all in the next one.